Hello and welcome to our third session of Local Food on the Public Plate. This is a procurement learning journey where we've been commissioned by the public service boards for Swansea and Neath for Talbot to explore with colleagues in the public services in Swansea and Neath for Talbot, how do we get locally sourced, nutritious food, locally grown on the public plate. So this is our third session, and we will be delighted to hand over to Social Farms and Gardens, who will be giving an introduction to some of the work that they've been involved in, sharing lessons learned from elsewhere with some great examples, hopefully that we can build together.
Roda, Pau, thank you for having us this morning. So as Zoe mentioned, Social Farms and Gardens has been doing a bit of work in this area, which is why we've been asked to come along today. Just to give a bit of background, because I imagine some of you don't know who we are. We're a UK-wide organisation. We've been running for around about 40 years, and we support communities to grow well together. So community gardens, community farms, community supported agriculture projects, orchards, allotments, school gardens, and very much around building resilient communities and enabling people to access healthy food and have a say in their food, and the kind of wider agenda around that. So around climate, around biodiversity, that's all as connected as so many of you have mentioned how food crosscuts so many different themes. My name's Alison Sheffield. I'm one of the Wales managers of the team. Our largest team in the UK of staff is in Wales. There's around 12 of us running various projects, and we're scattered all over the nation. The reason I'm here in particular is because I was leading a project called really catchily Sustainable Food Procurement Hubs, or something along those lines, in Carmarthenshire and North Powys, which was funded through the last tranche of the RDP EU funding from the Welsh Government, that finished up in October of last year. And it's had some really interesting coverage. Some of the work that kind of came out of that, although it was still at pilot level, has been kind of quite a useful catalyst in other areas. It certainly wasn't a project that solved all the issues, but it's kind of been able to act as a bit of a catalyst to encourage some more discussion and some interesting kind of challenges to what's been going on. And then I'll introduce Louise Gray as well, who's joined us on this project in particular. She did a little bit of work as a consultant on the Carmarthenshire and North Powys Procurement Food Hubs pilot. And Louise, do you want to give a little bit of background into?
Yeah, okay. So in the last year or so, I come from a community development background, really, but the part that I'm really excited about really is how a public procurement can be used as a policy lever. You know, it just feels like it's by far the most exciting potential for so many upstream benefits, that we really must utilize this in the future for resilient local quality food.
Absolutely. Just as kind of for me personally, I know that procurement or public sector food isn't all the food that there is purchased. It's actually quite a small kind of portion of it, but actually it offers an incredible opportunity for equalising, for giving everyone access to organic, everyone access to local, and it kind of removes some of those cultural barriers that can exist between communities and between different groups of people who think that certain types of food aren't accessible to them. So for me, I'm really passionate about public food leading the way in terms of what is available and what people should have access to. Should have choice around. So just hopefully we won't go on for too long. So we've got a bit of a presentation to go through, which is fairly structured. So hopefully from that, it should kind of give you some ideas that you can really apply. And then we've got a few questions that we're going to discuss at the end, to look at how we integrate some of the thoughts that have come out of other examples and how they can be applied into the Swansea Neath Talbot region. So yeah, I've kind of gone through this already, but we've taken 5 examples. We've said about so we were asked to look at kind of at scale examples, and about ambitious public food procurement. I will just throw in there, we've got England in there. It's not a good example, but it's kind of where things are falling down. So some of them are like examples of really good practice, and some of them are ones where there's real barriers that are coming in. So it's picking out those ones. Just starting off with a nice picture of this is in Rouen-Sartoux, apologies for my French, which is a shining example that we're going to come into first of all. But this is kind of the aspiration that we have. Quite a lot of our examples have used schools as kind of the initial catalyst for making change happen. And I just think, you know, this is what we're passionate about, is seeing people with their hands in the soil, in the kitchen, eating the food, and that whole journey going around from the youngest to the oldest of society that are able to participate in this. So that's kind of a bit of our vision for today and for the area. Right, Louise, I'm gonna witter first. I'm gonna carry on. Apologies. So the project that we ran in Carmarthenshire and North Powys, the model that we used, so we worked with very small scale growers, a community anchored food hub, who then sold into various spaces in the public sector that were selected. So we worked with schools, we worked with care homes, and we worked with a college, and we worked with a leisure facility. So there was a kind of broad spectrum. It wasn't taking the whole contract because that wasn't within the scope of the project, but it was piloting, could this be done? What are the barriers? Where are we kind of tripping up along this? So that's the model we used, and it was working with very small scale producers and acknowledging that they couldn't supply a whole range and they couldn't supply enough quantity, but actually there were opportunities for them still to supply what was demanded by the public sector. So we're going to be focusing very much on the demand drivers this week, and the demand drivers that we had in Carmarthenshire for why this project was set up there was a really keen and ambitious Carmarthenshire County Council. So within the partnerships team, and then that kind of drove support from the procurement team, and the care home teams in particular. The managers in the care homes were really kind of quite keen to drive this and to add more of their homes into the project. It's an agricultural county, and the heritage of the land and the connection to that, and the pride in growing food is really important. And particularly around the care homes, we were finding that was something that was really driving the kind of people who are living within the care homes, that connection to the food that had been grown on their land where they'd lived for all of their lives. That was really powerful. Carmarthenshire, as all the local authorities, a commitment to net zero, a commitment to driving the local economy. And so in Carmarthenshire, that's the Carmarthenshire we want. And so this absolutely fits right in there. And then it's great to have Mary here today. Both Carmarthenshire and Powys have a sustainable food places partnership. That's a really, particularly in Carmarthenshire, it's quite established now. It's got a good, strong reputation. It's got good buy-in from University of Wales, Trinity St David, from the Health Board, Hywel over there, from the County Council, and that buy-in from across departments and across the public services is really, really important, and that has enabled conversation, ideas, confidence building within the sector. Kind of counter to that, this hang on, go there. In Powys, we didn't have quite such strong demand drivers due to staffing issues within the county council in particular. A lot of staff changes and a real kind of shortage of staff that were within there. So that while there was passion from the individuals that were involved, they just didn't have capacity to be able to push this forward. And that was really noticeable, that even though there's a lot of connected and engaged growers in Powys, not having that demand and that consistent demand from the public sector was the barrier that we found in Powys in order to be able to push this forward. So demand is absolutely important, absolutely imperative. I've just got a couple of pictures here. So down in the, I've got to get my sides right here, the left-hand corner, Sean from the college, Neath Talbot College up in Newtown, purchasing from local growers there. He's got his leeks and his shallots and his cabbages, his greens. John is a farmer up in just outside of Newtown, just grows potatoes. This was a great opportunity for him to make sure that they were going to to local people. He was really quite passionate about that. And then we use Foothold Cymru and Llanelli were the community anchored food hub that we use. So they're already running deliveries around the county with their social kind of supermarket model. So they were able just to pop this in as well, and it enabled them as an organisation to be able to connect better to local growers, and that enabled more people to be able to access this as well through the other things that were going on as well. So it's not just about the procurement, because it does have to be sitting within in a wider thing. And just from the chefs that we were delivering to, there was a real high level of customer satisfaction in terms of that it was noticeable that the freshness of the vegetables and fruit was supplied that they were working with, and the wastage reduced as well. So the buy-in from the people on the ground was really high and really strong, which was great. Right, I am going to be quiet now, and I'm going to pass over to Louise to take us through some wider examples from slightly further afield.
Okay, can you just go back one slide? Oh,
that one?
No, the where the structure is. Okay, it's gone, is it?
Oh, which one do you want? Sorry, give me a bit more.
The slide that said the structure of the analysis. Okay,
yeah.
So I'm going to use 5, and we just say it then. I'm going to use 5 areas to analyze it. And can I just say, please ask questions as you're going along, if you like. Perhaps Zoe, you can pick up if there's any questions, because I mean, it's absolutely fine. It helps me, find out where the interest and, the understanding is, if people would like, as I go along. So I'm going to use the policy framework as the first one. The national, is it citywide, etc. Frameworks. And then I'm going to look at the goals. How are they, how ambitious are they, how they're defined, and how they're measured. And then the whole setting approach, which is where the demand is really generated. How is that developed in the 5 different projects? Involving the sort of supply chain, how is that operated, and what are the long-term consequences, and what does it look like? Who's involved later on in the picture? Okay, so our first example is Malmö city in Sweden. Malmö is a city of about the same size as Cardiff. It's an ex-industrial city. It's Sweden's third city, so it's quite a big city. And I mean, they got serious about their policy, really. They created a sustainable food policy, and it was interesting that it's led by the Department of Environment, but absolutely working hand in hand with the Department of Education and Health. And I think the comment that about the framework is that it was really committed leadership from the top, and everybody was pulling on the same in the same direction. Everyone had signed up to the goals. So since 2012, all the school canteens have been serving 100% organic. So the project started in 2010. So they'd already achieved that goal by 2012. The main key driver, really, which is probably why it was in the environment department, was this 40% reduction in greenhouse gases. So by 2020, they'd achieved 30% of that. So what's interesting about that is that they're using existing measures and certification. They've gone for that organic certification, and those goals, there's 2 of them, and they're really straightforward and easy to understand. So that was what I noted about that. The whole institution approach, well, basically what they did was fund the training. The training is absolutely at the heart of how they changed things in Sweden, and this is the part that they very much focused on. They focused very much on 2 aspects, really, not just skills development, but also that deeper learning, understanding each part of the system and how your particular part of the systems plays into the overall goal. So that the training was then tailored for depending on the various different elements in the system, but each element had some understanding about the others and how it fitted together in the big picture. and this, I think this is particularly Swedish. The biggest savings was the reduction in food waste. Per plate, it went down from 150 grams to 30 grams. So massive savings, because as in this country, the caterers pay for the kitchen waste, but it's the school itself that pays for the school waste. So that's where the biggest part of the saving came from. Okay, so the teaching staff are vital, and all the learning was absolutely embedded into the curriculum. That's where your customers, the pupils, you know, understand exactly what they're eating, what they get from a local carrot in terms of zero carbon, in terms of health, in terms of welfare, etc. So making all those connections in the classroom. Secondly, the role of the caterers were critical here. The caterers, as we can see from those types of pictures, were involved in developing the menus, the skills. They're basically moving from being just catering staff in the kitchen to being part of the learning process, and their role is reframed as the leaders in sustainability, really, which ups their value, and they're finding that they've got much more attraction from new entrants, particularly with the family-friendly hours. So it's addressing the staffing shortages as well. So involving the sites, the supply chain, I mean, critically, it was strengthened and supported to come to the table. The procurement contracts were changed in line with the strategy, so that everyone knows what they want to buy, and those selling know what they're selling, so that farmers understand how to reframe what they're selling in relation to what the procurement contracts include. So effectively rebalancing the risk for the farmers to the whole supply chain as a whole. Great, we've got quite a few supply chain people here. The long-term commitment, well, this was a 10-year programme, and critically, obviously, there was changes in political leadership at the time, but it was cross-party, so that was an important element. And they focus on how much hard work this is, and also, rather than just individual pilot projects, they were able to reiterate, so to do again, to go round the loop again and again. So that was a key factor in what they determine as their success long term. Okay. So next slide, please. So quite different environment in Moulins-Satou. So this is a little town right down in the south in France, a very dry area, not an area where a lot of vegetables are grown. So I don't know what the national framework is, but absolutely this little town decided that they were going to really focus in on sustainable food, and created a completely separate department for that process. A department of 6 people that is involved in, you know, data collection, evaluating the health, disseminating, etc., and focusing on particular vulnerable groups as well. Setting up the whole partnership framework. Well, the goals, they are focusing on health goals as well here, but the two stated goals are they've been organic, 100% organic since 2012, and 70% of that produce is provided by the city farm. This is this is the key element of this particular example, is the whole thing stands on a municipal farm that's just on the outskirts of this little town. The policy framework, the leadership is very much focused on, first of all, the schools, but then expanding that to the whole community. it's led by a pedagogical approach. The French like that, I think, which very much puts what the learning in the school at the heart of it. What the farm includes is this 10-acre farm divided up into three parts, and commercial farmers each are running their own horticultural business on that farm. In the final 1 acre, we have a plot for the children and their families. So we have an outdoor classroom there, and that's what was in that picture that we saw earlier. There's also an indoor classroom. There's also a kitchen there. So what is happening is that the catering staff are working in that kitchen on site in the farm, developing the menus with the children, and the families are supported. The way in which they've expanded out to the community is that they've used what they call animation teams led by teachers that involve families given a challenge. They have to eat organic for a whole year and not spend any more money. So that's been quite a thing in the community, doing that challenge, and has meant that along with that capacity for the kids to get their hands dirty all year round and grow food all year round with their parents volunteering on that outdoor classroom site, meant that they've captured the whole community really in the process of taking forward their sustainable food policy. So this has become famous, this example across Europe, and it's now at the heart of all sorts of EU programs, creating new farmers, but also creating sustainable food managers. They're bio canteens, the project is called, and there's all sorts of university involvement now with measuring all the health impacts, etc. So all that project all grown from the municipal farm and that vision from the beginning. So quite exciting there. Okay, any comments at all? No, should I just go on? Okay, can you give that next slide? Yep. So close to home, Scotland. So quite exciting things really they're doing in Scotland. Of course, they've got the Act, they've got the Good Food Nation Act that was passed in 2022, and that has then created national action plans and puts them a duty on all 32 local authorities to create local action plans. You know, this is the key stuff that can go into those procurement documents. Food for Life. I'm assuming people have heard of Food for Life. So this is a key program, massive program run by the Soil Association that has been going for many years. It's quite a flagship program of theirs. So in Scotland, the Scottish Government asked Food for Life in 2018 to narrow their focus down to working specifically just with school caterers and local schools in all 32 authorities. And they created a team of staff, of Food for Life staff Scotland to deliver that. Okay, so the goals are completely embedded in that program, so they're already there. So those goals are the goals around food quality, food leadership and culture, food education and community and partnership, etc. That's embedded in their bronze, silver and gold awards that the schools work through. So the exciting thing about that, and I think the thing that works really, is that the schools gets hand-holding through that process. They get rewards for each step along the way for their progression through that, through the scheme, and they get practical hands-on support, resources, online resources, etc. Support with budgets, support with data analysis, support with supplier information analysis. key factor built into the whole setting approach that Food for Life do is this, in schools anyway, is the SNAG, the Schools Nutrition Action Group. So that's the leadership group that is absolutely participatory. So it involves the children, it involves the parents, it involves the governors, it involves the wider community, as well as the teaching and the catering staff into that group that leads the whole school approach. Again, the whole project puts catering staff at the heart of these changes. They're upskilled. They have a new role within the school and increased status because of that. And parental engagement, of course, is part of that scheme. Okay, the supply chain. Well, I've been talking to Lucy Worsley. No, not Worsley. That's the famous one, isn't it? Wordle. That's the one. Lucy Wordle. And she's the procurement officer. So that's been really interesting. She has the benefit of those contracts that reflect the strategy. She has the benefit of the whole school approach and that pull from the demand to achieve the local, to the high quality, the nutrition, etc. And she still says there's no blueprint, there's no one size fits all. It's all about making those connections. But she is at least on the spot then, with that experience, with that team around her, providing the oil to make those connections between the suppliers and the buyers as well. So we have one really good example of that. I don't know if the picture is next. Yeah, this is an example, and I think that must be Lucy in the middle there. The guy on the right is the farmer. So this is the farmer from Mosgiel Farm in East Argyllshire. So he took over his parents' farm, he turned it organic, and then was miffed at how little of the profit he was getting. So he said, okay, I'm going to serve milk into schools directly. How can I do that? Okay, so the other guy, I think, is the local authority rep. So what Lucy did was bring the local authority and the key decision makers from East Argyll to the farm so that they could see how they could deliver it. So what he's done is set up milk vending machines into the schools so that the kids put their reused beakers underneath the milk stream, etc., and help themselves to the milk. So that depends on the kids actually doing that so that demand for it there. But what he's managed to do is create 25 jobs in the process of this, and as he's going from strength to strength with this project. Okay, in Scotland, just going back to the previous slide then, in Scotland, they have Scotland Excel, which is the procurement framework body, which is great in that they can, carve up the contracts to make them much smaller. But Lucy is saying it's still hard, tough going working with them. But, she has success is one step at a time, really, between the contractors. She's looking for contracts that guarantee prices, amounts, and the cooperation. Okay, the long term. Well, it's an ongoing project. So Food for Life over the last 6 years have managed to sign up 50% of the 32 local authorities. So work in progress, but there is that long-term commitment. It's a stable commitment from the Welsh government, from the Scottish government for this process. Okay, on to England. Okay, so it felt like it was really useful to include England in this process, as a compare and contrast with Scotland, really. So obviously their food strategy that Henry Dimbleby wrote was not accepted, which was a massive disappointment because everybody seemed to be behind that strategy. And the Food for Life people working in England as well really describe that as a real barrier, that there isn't that massive overall drive for that policy framework. However, of course, England's a big place and there's lots of examples of good practice locally. So I think what we can take out from the English example is that you can do it without the national strategy, even if it may be harder. So, well, we just put there in the goals. There aren't any national goals, but the goals that there are usually designed by the local authorities and often come out of whatever the drivers are locally. But it's just great to notice what a groundswell of interest there is in and backlash against ultra processed food at the moment. So it's there's a Commons Health Committee running at the moment, isn't there, with this information. Okay, so the whole institution approach or whole setting approach, Food for Life support the caterers rather than the schools, because the caterers have to pay for the Food for Life on a commercial basis. So they can achieve the Food for Life caterers mark, and quite a few of the organisations have. Leicestershire is an example where the local authority have brought in Food for Life to work with the schools as well, and that makes it so much easier if you've got that whole school approach. Gavin Fletcher from Leicestershire, he says that he couldn't have done it without local authority caterers, that commercial caterers don't operate on the same, scope for values to operate decision making, but the local authority caterers, of course, can do that. And we're lucky in Wales, we've got local authority caterers too, but so many of them are contracted out in England to private contractors. Okay, the supply chain. Yeah, I think, yeah, it depends on individuals, and individuals are doing different things in different areas. I think what the approach that Gavin has taken in order to shift things in Leicester is to be really clear that those contracts, you have to know what you're buying and exactly how what you're buying fits into that bigger picture of those wider benefits to this local food, and it has to be measured in some way. So he uses business as usual as the standard, and then asks farmers then to measure baselines from that point, the carbon and the biodiversity from that point, and through that way has evidenced how local high quality food chains can make a difference. Okay, so obviously that the long-term commitment isn't there at the moment, but so there's the national food conversation that is really evidencing how the local public, the public in general, everybody through the citizens' assemblies, is that everybody is looking for higher standards in food, with food in both schools and hospitals. Okay, homeward straight, Wales. Well, obviously people know about the policy framework in Wales. I mean, it's quite general and it's quite groundbreaking in some ways. I think it feels like we're kind of missing the food element, and there was a big disappointment when the community food strategy failed by one vote quite recently in the Senedd. However, we do have all sorts of strong partnerships operating in Wales, and we have some funding in relation to the foundational economy, and that's what's funding quite a lot of the pilots around. So that's delivering locally as well. So that's quite exciting. The goals. Oops, we've changed. Okay, sorry, you put me off there. Okay, well, the goals are going to be locally defined. But I think one thing that I learned that is interesting about Scotland is that they defined local as Scottish. So I don't think we need to get too worried about exactly what local is, because it's developing the foundation economy anywhere in Wales if it's Welsh produce. And yes, looking at how we measure those things, there's lots of expertise out there. The Cool Food Pro is a calculator that calculates the local, organic, and seasonal measure for local food. So that's the sort of thing that could be used for farmers and for procurement contracts to utilise. In Wales, we have the Healthy Schools scheme, which feels like it's a great umbrella. It's really well written, very flexible for individual schools to take up what they wish. However, food is lumped in with fitness, and it's one of 7 targets. It feels like there needs to be something quite specifically on food that would be very useful in Wales that fits underneath the Healthy Schools scheme. And of course, that scheme doesn't come with the sort of hands-on support and step-by-step approach that the Food for Life does. Schools are a bit more on their own with it here. Yeah, and they don't have snags, school nutrition action groups on the whole. Well, the supply chain involvement, we've already talked about that. So it was just really useful talking to Alex in Carmarthen that the latest round of what was the courgette supply project, involving centrally, of course, Castell Howell. The current one, the Welsh Veg in Schools, is delivering 35 tonnes of veg into Carmarthen, Monmouth and Cardiff. And there's the Field to Fork local as well scheme, basically demonstrating that we can make the supply chain work. What it feels like is these projects are doing is demonstrating the supply chain. What our presentation is all about is how do you combine that then with the supply side of it. Okay. Long-term commitment, yeah, as in England, of course, there's changing public groundswell interest in food, so it feels quite exciting times really in some ways. And you know and we need local food strategies, and that's, for example, is what Carmarthenshire Public Service Board are doing is using their wellbeing strategy to motor forward their food strategy. Okay. Well, to summarize, really, I suppose, yeah, the national framework is really important. It really aids that bigger picture, pulls in all the partners and gets everybody singing off the same page. However, various examples have shown that you can do it locally, which is quite exciting. The goals, it's important to set ambitious goals, not too many of them, make them clear, make them measurable, and use existing metrics so that you don't have to, sort of embed a new metric into the system. That was what I took out of the examples. The whole setting approach is absolutely key, because everybody using that setting then becomes the customers, which drives the whole process forward. Training that involves knowledge as well as skills is an absolutely key element, and that is the element that needs to be funded really in any project, really. So a stat that Alex gave me is that, well, I've written it down in the long-term commitments, is that upfront cost can be recouped within 3 to 5 years because of the savings, mostly on waste, and then on using less meat but high quality meat, etc. That leadership, the leadership is key, and we need to support the caterers. In Carmarthenshire, there's also another project going on with caterers, using the caterers to develop new menus that use local seasonal produce, so that other caterers who don't have that capacity to design menus can just pull down those menus that are better than the existing ones. So I've already said quite a bit about the supply chain. The key thing, I suppose, is about rebalancing the risk. You know, it's a really tough time for farmers. I think you already heard that from Ed Morgan last week. Valuing staff, yeah, so changing the whole system, but starting with the school. So I think I've talked for long enough. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Louise and Alison, for that. That's really insightful to see some of the things that are happening elsewhere. I think the overarching theme that keeps shining through is collaboration and whole system, and making sure that everyone that needs to be engaged is around the table and on board with it all. As you've highlighted in your slides, we recently did a project where we took called Gower Field to Fork, and it only worked because we had the growers, the parents, the children, the catering teams, the local authorities, the local distributors. Everybody was, yes, we were all around the table, and yes, we are going to make this work. It was, and that is the only way I think that you can get these projects going.